Alright, so class, welcome to the new chapter. This chapter is entirely on bond valuation. Alright, so as you can see, there's two images. The first image is the might not be the common one, but that is the corporate bond. That's a certificate. The second image, I guess you're very familiar, right? James Bond. So today we won't be talking about James Bond. We'll be interested in talking about corporate bond. Alright, so until 1970s, if you purchase bonds, alright, if you purchase bonds, in return they're going to give you a piece of paper, just like the one on the first image. Alright, that's a piece of paper you will receive to show it's like an evidence to show that you own, the particular bond. What is the features? What is the value of the loan? What are the terms, the maturity? All those important details will be listed in the certificate. Right. So until 1970s, right, in those times they were giving you. So that is the proof that you own that particular bond. But nowadays they no longer give you the certificate. It's more of a electronic data. Right. It's kept digitally. Right. So that's the difference between those times and now. Right. So class, topics on bond is a very crucial topic as well. Right? And we will be talking about a lot of corporate bonds. Okay. Uh, if you look at governments, if they need money, they usually issue bonds. Okay, companies, the corporates do issue bonds, governments do issue bonds. That is one way of raising funding. All right, so bond is an example of raising finances for a company or even for the government. Therefore, if you remember what we studied, what we learned in chapter 1, the three core topics, which is investment, second is financing, third is dividend policy, I guess you could guess this bond valuation of bonds comes under second core topic, which is financing. All right, so bond valuation or bond, entirely the chapter comes under the umbrella of financing. So this is another form of financing for a company. So let's look at the objective in this chapter. I'll be explaining the fundamental characteristics of a bond issue. All right, characteristic means the features, the important features. There are few important features. You need to know that. So without knowing those features, for example, maturity, par value, the market value, without knowing the features, you cannot estimate the value of a bond. All right. So we're going to find out about the characteristics. Second, how the valuation of a bond based on the present value technique. If you remember the term present value, we have started using that from chapter 4. Alright, so the present value technique, how it's related. As I mentioned earlier, every chapters you learned before, it is interrelated in the future topics. Alright, so how we're going to find out how the present value technique will be used to value bond. And the third one, you're going to find the differences among different concepts of yield. All right, you have yield to maturity, yield to call, anticipated realized yield. All right, the common one that we are more interested is yield to maturity, right? And of course, it's supposed to be the point 4. Describe the techniques for anticipating changes in the interest rates. All right, so whenever the interest rate changes, how that it affects the companies. All right, so class, these are the objectives, and we're going to be learning about bonds. Right. All right, let's look at the principle of bond valuation and investment. All right, so the fundamentals of bond valuation process. All right, that's what we're going to look into it. Then the rates of return. There's 3 types of rates of return. All right, we'll be learning in detail later. And how the movement of interest rates affects the company. And the last one is investment strategy, how are you going to make a decision? Because interest rate, the market interest rate is not fixed. All right. Over the time, the market's interest rate reduces. As you can see, at this particular point of time, if the market is not doing well, the interest rate will be dropped. All right, so that um, you have a more capacity to spend. All right, that's why the interest rate. When the market is going better, the interest rate will start to rise. All right, so we need to find a strategy whereby when the market interest rate change, how the valuation of a bond will also differ. Right. All right, so let's start with the definition itself. The definition of bond: long-term contractual obligation of the firm to pay interest to the bondholder as well as the face value of the bond at maturity. Alright, so you can break the whole definition into few important terms there. Alright, so the first one, long-term contractual obligation. Alright, so the first point you have to take notice, it is a long-term. Alright, bond is a long-term liability. You cannot find a short-term bond. There's no bond for 3 months or 4 months or 5 months. Right? Bond, it means it's a long-term. It's more than a year. Alright? Government bonds could span more than 20 years. Right? So bond is a long-term contractual obligation, which means you have already signed an agreement with the third parties. All right, between the company and the bondholder or the government or the bondholders, you have to, there is a contract, there's an agreement. So you have no choice of then paying the interest or paying back the face value as what you have agreed. All right, so the contractual obligation, you're obliged to make the payment. All right, so the firm to pay interest to the bondholder as well as the face value of the bond at maturity. All right. So, class, when you purchase a bond, you are required to make you are the company required to make two payments to you. All right. One is a payment in the form of interest. Second, you are required to pay the par value or face value, which is end the maturity. Alright, so as you can see, the image below, alright. So you have a lender and you have a borrower. Who are the lenders? People who have a surplus fund. Alright, they're planning to invest. Alright, so they want to get more return. And here is a borrower. People or companies, they need funding. Alright, they are the deficit units. They need more funding, therefore they will issue bonds. Alright. So let's see how the whole bond system works. Okay, let's say for example Malaysian Airlines. Right? Let's say Malaysian Airlines, they are deficit, they need money. So what they do, they issue bonds. They issue bonds to the lenders. Alright, let's say other companies or some people who who have a surplus fund who are willing to invest. So they will purchase the bond from Malaysian Airlines, right? So people investing in a company by purchasing the bonds, all right? So people are buying Malaysian Airlines bonds, all right? So you will be getting like a digital certificate saying that, all right, you purchased this amount of bonds, all right? And then once you purchase the bond, what you're going to get in return. So the Malaysian Airlines, let's say they will receive, let's talk about every, whenever we go, so remember whenever you're going to do a calculation, valuation on bonds, we calculate based on single bond, alright? And the single bond's par value is 1000, okay? So let's say one A person purchase a bond, all right, therefore they will transfer 1000 ringgit to the company, let's say Malaysian Airlines. What does the Malaysian Airlines give return to the lender, all right, or the bond holder, right? Once you purchase the bond, you become the bond holder. So what the bond holders will get in return? They get return in two forms. One, they will get a receive interest payment until the end of the term. All right, so usually in a year, twice, semi-annual, they will get every 6 months. They will get interest from Malaysian Airlines. All right, or sometimes it just every year once. All right, so they will be getting return for the next. If let's say a bond has a maturity for 10 years, they will be getting interest for 10 years. All right, they'll be getting interest for 10 years. Then at the end of the 10th year, they will get back the face value. All right, so they will be getting back the the face value means like the principal amount. Okay, the principal amount. Initially, you'll be getting interest. In return, you will get at the end of the maturity, you'll be getting face value. All right, so this is the whole system of bonds, whereby you only purchase bond, you pay one time 1000 ringgit, all right, a single bond. In return, you'll be getting interest. Let's say it's a 10-year bond, you'll be getting interest for the every year for the next 10 years, and then at the 10th year, you'll be getting a par value. All right, usually it's the same 1000. Okay. All right, so that is the definition of bond. All right, so let's look at other key terms in bond contract. All right, the first one would be bond indenture. All right, so one bond indenture means a formal or official document. All right, so as I said, bond is a contract, it's a legal agreement. All right, so it has major provisions, or we call this a major agreement. All right, more than 100 pages long, and it's a complicated and legal document. All right, we have a lot of legal jargons and financial terms and conditions on that, and will be administered by a trustee, usually a commercial bank. All right, so let's say when I say Malaysian Airlines issuing bonds, they need funding. Malaysian Airlines themselves cannot issue bonds directly to the market, right? They have to go through a commercial bank or investment banks. There has to be a third party involved, right? So they will administer, and they will act as a trustee into the whole system. Okay, so that is bond intention. Next, par value. All right, par value. Another name is face value. For corporates, usually it's 1000. All right, for corporates, usually 1000. For federal, state, and local governments, all right, usually it's 5000 or 10,000. So corporate, usually 1000, the par value. All right, par value means how much you have to pay back at the end of the maturity. If it's 10 years, means at the 10th year, what do you have to pay back? All right, next you have a coupon rate. All right, the coupon rate is the actual interest on the bond. All right, it is payable semi-annually, usually twice a year. All right, so class is the actual interest on the bond. And here's the key concept. To the extent that interest rates in the market go above or below the coupon rate, the market price of the bond will change from par value. All right, so they're talking about the interest, the actual interest you're going to pay. When the actual interest rate changes, let's say last time was 7%, then later changes to the market interest rate, let's say changes to 10%, then the overall market price of the bond will change. Alright, so later we're going to be doing some examples, then you're going to get the idea how the key concept, what are the key concepts we're talking about. Alright. Alright, so class, remember for coupon rate, coupon rate is different compared to yield to maturity. Alright, there's two terms used. One is actual interest you're going to pay to the company, that is coupon rate, and another one is yield to maturity, is the overall return to the company. Alright. Alright, the next one is variable rate notes or floating rate notes. So class, coupon rate is fixed. Alright, the coupon rate is fixed. If it's a variable note, then it varies with a stipulated short-term rate. Alright. So class, remember coupon rate usually is fixed in the beginning itself. But if it's a variable rate notes, then you can see that the coupon rate will change, alright, according to the market. And then you have a zero coupon bonds. Alright. In a zero coupon bond, you don't pay coupons in between, but you will be paying a higher par value. Alright, instead of paying interest in the middle, alright, if let's say 10 years, you're supposed to pay interest. If it's a zero coupon bond, you don't pay the interest, right? But what you will do, end up paying higher par value. Okay. Alright, then you have a maturity date at which the final payment is due at the stipulated par value. Alright, so this is important feature of a bond. Every bond has a maturity, which means if you begin today, you have 5 years to end it. Okay, if you begin today, you have 10 years. So every bond has a maturity, so you have to tell when you make the final payment and settle the bond. Alright, then you have a perpetual bonds. Alright, so the perpetual bond is you're not required to have a maturity. Alright, that's called perpetual. Perpetual means forever. Right, so in general general idea is every bond has a maturity, but there are some special cases where you call them as a perpetual bonds, which means there is no maturity. That means you will be end up paying interest all the way. Alright, you don't need to pay any par value because you're not settling the loan. You will be end up paying interest. Alright, next is a serial payment. Alright, a serial payment is instead of you are paying a par value in a serial payment, you don't pay the par value, but you distribute the par value along the years, the maturity, right? Along the years, if let's say 5 years, you need to pay 1,000. Every year you end up paying 200 plus the interest. Alright, so serial payment means you don't pay par value, you include the par value in your yearly coupon payment. So you pay together. Alright. Okay, next you have a sinking fund. Alright, so sinking fund is whereby a company has to make a lump sum payment at the end of the maturity. Alright, so if you want to make a lump sum payment at the end of the maturity, uh, you need to have sufficient payment, right? So what the companies will do is, since you have to make a lump sum payment at the end of the maturity, what will you do is you will start to have savings every year. All right, you will set away certain portion of your profit, all right, so that at the time of maturity you have sufficient money to pay your par value, all right, the principal amount. All right, then you have a call provision. All right, call provision on the other hand is, it allows the corporation to call or force in all of the debt prior to maturity. All right, so call provision is, the company has a right whereby they, if let's say the company's a bond has a 5 years maturity, they might not need to wait until 5 years. They can settle the loan earlier, maybe in 3 years. All right, so that is called call provision. Put provision, the bondholders have the right whereby they can, instead of waiting until let's say 5 years maturity, instead of waiting until 5 years, they can ask the company to settle the bond earlier. So that is put provision. Okay.